80% of Americans seem to find themselves in debt. Some will never pay back their debt. Some are so overburdened by debt that they must claim bankruptcy. There doesn't seem to be a particular type of debt that is prominent. It simply seems as though there is more debt piling up in all areas and for nearly everyone. This is when you know the empire is falling. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Today we're going to look at the serious situation of household debt. Let's begin. This is from Comet, and they provided some information here. They surveyed a small group of people, but I do believe that despite the size of the sample, it really goes for all of the US. Okay, so let's take a look at what they showed here with their infographics. They tell a big story here in these infographics. I thought it would be really great to do a video about this because it's a topic I cover very often because it affects the average person. Okay, so let's take a look at the average debt portfolio by generation, and you will see that no matter what generation you look at, there's about 80% of the people currently in debt. And there's different groupings here, the type of debt that we will see. And I want to start with this, credit cards. Now, I don't believe it is wise to ever carry a balance on a credit card. We are talking about on the minimum, you're going to see 18% on that credit card debt. 18%. It would be much better if you know that you need to carry this debt for more than, let's say, 1 month. You might as well get a line of credit. Now, for the average person, it is so easy to get a line of credit these days. I'm offered all the time, consistently. I don't want it. I say no. And I'm sure you get offered too. It doesn't even matter what your credit is. They'll offer to anybody. So people end up carrying this balance on their credit cards. It's at least 18%. And a lot of times they have, 1, 2, 3, 5 different credit cards, different, one from this big box store and one from that big box store, a Visa, a MasterCard, and so on. And they carry balances on all of them. They all have different interest rates. And unfortunately, it's a very big problem. Now, no matter what generation you look at, you're going to see a massive amount of credit card debt. That's just one example. So I think personally, things happen, right? Something happened, something came up, you just didn't have the money that month. And if that's the case, well, you do what you got to do. But a lot of people are simply carrying the balance month after month. And that's not a good sign. You need to figure it out right away. You have to be honest with yourself. Can you pay this back before the next bill is due? No, then you need to look into something like a line of credit. At the very least, that's going to reduce the amount of interest that you owe. It's not going to fix the problem, but at least the compounding effect is going to be better. All right? That's one thing. Now, student loans. There is approximately $1.5 trillion worth of student loans in the US. I assure you, it's never going to be paid back. Many people have been surveyed about this and they said they're not going to be paid back. I'll talk more about that in a moment, but you can see here clearly that millennials make up the biggest group there. Unfortunately for the millennials, they're not really getting paid what they need to pay off the student loans in a timely manner. You look at auto loans, same situation here, whether it's medical, but for now, I want to talk about mortgages. And mortgages are a very big issue because you're talking about such a big pile of debt. It's not as if the credit card, they're carrying a $5,000 balance. We're talking about mortgages of maybe $500,000. Depending on the city you live in, that's actually a very reasonable mortgage size for the average person. That's something that somebody who's already in credit card debt, already has student loans, they're not going to be able to pay off that $500K in mortgages. It's all added up on top. Okay? So think about that for a minute, right? There's not just one level of debt. So, of course, you add on to that unpaid bills, personal loans, and so many others. Let's switch gears here. Looking at this, the average debt portfolio by region. Very quickly, just want to touch on this here. You can see that some areas versus others seem to be worse, but I think overall it's, we'll say approximately the same. One of the ones that I found interesting was that the West has the highest mortgages, and maybe that's because you're seeing areas like Seattle, maybe you're seeing areas like San Francisco, LA, and so many others on the West Coast with very, very expensive homes, but it doesn't really tell us what's happening in New York and other places. So that's something interesting. Let's move on quickly here. From lemons to lemonade, attitudes toward overcoming debt. You can see that people feel happier when they pay off their debt. And that's pretty obvious because debt is something that you carry with you every day. It's always there. There's creditors coming after you, and you need to do what you can. I hope that you understand for the average person. I mean, I should make a video specifically about getting out of debt. There are some simple strategies that people need to use that at least lessen the burden. And one of those things is to use a line of credit versus using the very, very expensive, the loan shark methods, the cash advance, the payday loans, and all this business. It's so expensive. Now, I understand a lot of people, they are burdened by it. They can't get out of the trap, but there are ways. There are ways, I assure you. Have no fear. So let's move on from that. The pros and cons of acquiring debt. All right. Now, what has debt allowed you to do? And in this example, they're taking out, look at the way that they suggest it anyway. Attend college or another higher education program, 51.9%, right? Complete a purchase necessary for basic living. Maybe that's their house. Complete a purchase for personal enjoyment. Cover medical expenses, provide for the family, vacation, and so on, okay? And they're basically, these here are what has debt prevented you from doing, and number one on the list is traveling or purchasing expensive items, attending social events, and so on. Now, the school one is something that I'm going to do a whole video about this, and you can tell me if you want to hear this. I know a lot of people will disagree with me, but I'm not a big fan of the school system. The education system, in my opinion, in my experience, is a failure. Now, do we need people that are surgeons? Do we need people that are highly skilled and they are there for, take the surgeon example. I think we really need those surgeons. I think it's important that people go to school and they are trained in that, and they should be well paid. If something happens to somebody and they need an emergency to be taken care of, you want a highly trained individual to be working on that. That's fine. They should be paid accordingly. I am all in favor of that. But the average bachelor's degree or college diploma, depending on what country you live in, I don't think that it has any validity. I think it's really sort of garbage, if you ask me. And a lot of people have that education. And I don't mean to judge anybody. But look at what it's done to the average person. When you look at it, I mean, there's a lot of people that I know, they just keep going to school. They went for school for 4 years, and they thought, well, I can't really do anything with this, so I should continue on. So they went on for another 1, 2, or 3 years. Now they're highly educated and they have no work experience. They're in their, let's say, late 20s at this point. They need to get out into the workforce. They have a very, very large pile of debt that's sitting there, the student loans. So now they can't get to buy their own home. They can't buy those big ticket items. And they have this big pile of debt that continues to compound. It's not a good sign. That's the way you skew the system. They're wondering why people aren't having as many children as before. They're wondering why the economy is a little sluggish. This is just one of those reasons. Now, I know that there are a lot of people out there who would disagree with me, but please understand what I'm talking about here. I'd like to do a whole video about it. If you're interested, please let me know. Let me move on here quickly. All right. Perspectives on debt. Percentage of respondents who believe debt speaks to someone's personal qualities. And you can see here, never been in debt, 45% overcame debt. You'll see here the generation which is involved in higher levels of debt. And look, I believe debt allows people to more easily achieve their dreams. 51% agree with that. Now, I know a lot of people are thinking, hey, that's mortgages. And so I have the so-called American dream. I want to be able to buy my own home. I am going to use the debt to get that home, pay the debt off over a 25 to 30 year period, and live in a good life. Now, I think that it's something that most people do. Whatever you got to do, that's on your own, your own opinion. You do what you have to do. I just think that, unfortunately, a lot of people find themselves in too much debt. They thought that they could pay off, let's just say, in Toronto, this would be absolutely nothing. But let's just say you had $500,000 of mortgage debt, okay? Then on top of that, maybe you had, let's just make up some numbers here, $10,000 of additional debt that you had, maybe on a line of credit or something else. Maybe you're owing perhaps another $10,000. Maybe that's on your car. Maybe it's on other assets. Okay, so you have a big pile of debt here, and that's fine. Let's say 520, right? What about those? Oh, and of course, these are monthly payments. They add up to whatever. Let's say you're pushed to the maximum. You're pushed to a 70% ratio, 80% maybe. I'll be generous. 70% of your income is consumed by different expenses, whether that's simple things like food, getting to work and back, your gasoline, whatever, 70%. So you're left with that 30%. Maybe you like to go to the movies, maybe you like to go to the restaurants after, and it eats away at that slowly but surely. There's not much left over. But what happens when you have those unexpected expenses? And that's what I really worry about. People are not prepared. People are not ready for an appliance to go down, their car to break down, their, unfortunate circumstances. I don't even want to say it, but things, health-related things that occur. And that's not a good thing because people need to be prepared. And debt, while you think that you can pay it all off, look, hey, it's 70%. I have 30% to work with. The unexpected, unfortunate circumstances are when people find themselves overburdened. So that's all for this video. If you found it informative, please give me a thumbs up. Last but not least, if you found the video informative, I know you'll find my books, The Money GPS, and my newer release, Global Economic Collapse, even more informative. You can flip through these books. Just go over to Amazon. There's a look inside feature. It's going to allow you to flip through the pages of these books to see if you like them. Take care.